I will open today's meeting of Te Puna Kōrero for the 23rd of May 2024. To begin, I'd like to invite Councillor Wehapi to lead us in karakia.
Me inoi tātou, whakatakata hou ki te uru, whakatakata hou kia mā kina ki uta, kia mā taratara ki ana te atakura he tio, ti hei.
Thank you, everyone. First of all, I've got apologies from Taku Parai and Councillor Johnson. I will move those. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Thilo, thank you very much. All in favour, please say aye. Opposed? That is carried. Public forum, there is none today. No conflicts. Conflict of interest declarations. Are there any conflicts? No, there do not appear to be any. There are no items of extraordinary business. I'll move to confirmation of minutes for Tuesday, 14th of May 2024 Te Puna Kōrero meeting. I will move those minutes. Do I have a seconder? I've got Councillor Leggett, thank you very much. Any comments or amendments to those minutes? Councillor Duncan.
On page 12, submitter 167, Dr. Alice Miller was M-I-L-L-E-R, not A-R as the minutes record.
Excellent spotting. Thank you very much. We've noted that. All right. Thank you very much, Mike. With that amendment, I will put that to the vote. All those in favour, please say aye. Opposed? That is carried. We move now to item 7.1, Porirua City Council Transport Bylaw. I'll move the report to open it for discussion. Councillor Ford, thank you very much. I will invite council officers to speak to the report. I think, Kaylee, you're going to come and speak to this. And did Ethel want to come up as well? Cool. All right, Kaylee, over to you.
Through the chair. Hi there. So we've got I'll take it as read, and I can invite any questions for this report.
Okay, cool. Yeah, we can jump straight into questions. Do we have any questions from councillors? Councillor Hayward.
Kia ora, mātua upoko, mihi he kai kanahina. Thank you, officers, for your report here, Pātai. I am just trying to understand, with regards to the Raiha Street lines, those are close to the entrance to the SDA school. Have they been consulted with regards to the proposed changes around that area? I would think that they would have no issues, but I just want to check that they have been consulted.
Through the chair, they have not been consulted, but we're going to put a notice out on the website and in the paper that says 14 days after they have been approved or the resolution's been put through, the public can make objections on this, and then if there are any safety objections, we can relook at the lines. And
okay, I don't have any other subs, so I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Mayor Baker.
Thank you. The Whitby Collegiate design, the red, what map is that? One of the attachments, page 30. It's not a raised crossing, is it?
Just
red markings on the road.
It's not a raised crossing.
Thank you.
Are there any further questions? There do not appear to be any. All right, so in that case, I will put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Opposed? That is carried. Thank you very much. Moving through to item 7.2, our finance report. I'll move the report to open it for discussion. Councillor Hayward, thank you. I'll hand over to officers to speak. Is it Ian or Jim will speak to this?
I'll start, yeah.
Cool.
Just by way of introduction for this report, so you'll note that there's several formal approvals we're seeking to keep the CE whole in terms of her delegations. So we're just tidying up a number of matters in there, both in the OPEX and in CAPEX. We've obviously indicated seeking formal approval for the additional spend for the storage tank that has been previously discussed, and also the budget for the Datascape project that if we want to really get into, we can talk about in the major quarterly projects report. So I'm going to hand over to Ian if there's anything you want to highlight, and then we'll take questions.
Thank you, Jim. So just I'll take the report as read, but just to work through the recommendations, I think there might be benefit in some of the conversation coming through those points. We've undertaken a fairly comprehensive OPEX reforecast in March, and as a result, we've adjusted our revenue figures down by 14 million, and our expenses increased by 11 million. Now, obviously, those two things, when combined, have a significant impact on the surplus. It's still an accounting profit in that it's still above zero, so that's a positive. The table in paragraph 2 shows the surplus against the annual plan, LTP year 3, and also prior year. I'd particularly draw your eyes to the council balanced budget line. We are, in a worse position than
That's page 44 for people. They would have lost track on that one, Ian.
Sorry, worse. It's a word I've just invented. But paragraph 3 in particular shows you where the adjustments have been made. Now, hopefully, there is some reassurance to you that a lot of these things are non-cash and/or funding capital items, and some of them are phasing. So, in other words, take for instance the largest singular item there, the KO subsidy arrangement. That's associated with the Bothamley Park. So when the annual plan was first, drafted, the assumptions around when we would receive income associated with that have subsequently changed. So that's a $10 million adjustment to revenue, but it actually has no impact on ratepayers as such. So I guess the downwards movement is largely described in paragraph 3. But to, I guess, summarise it, it is largely indicative of the tough times that everyone's facing, all households are facing, but no less, council is also up against those tough times. There is a positive potential upside. So in paragraph 4, I make mention of some of the risks and opportunities that are out there that are not able to be quantified just yet. We're still working on them. We're still getting that clarity. But there's potential upside of circa 1.2, 1.3 million, which would be very beneficial, and we're doing the best we can to follow those particular opportunities. In particular, Waka Kotahi, there's some money there that we're really chasing hard. So that's, I guess, the first collection of recommendations, just with regards to the financial forecast. Any questions on those, that block of recommendations in particular?
I've got Mayor Baker.
Well, really, I'm born a couple of questions about C, the water storage tank.
Yep.
I think I'd like to see actually the bills or invoices that are coming in from this, because you cannot tell me these contractors, we started it was at 48 and now we're at 97. You cannot tell me that Wellington Water or whoever's getting this pricing are doing a good job. There is no way something can go up twice, if not 3 times. And as a council, how do we actually accept that? Because no price that's coming into that department in council is correct. So we get wrecked from the ratepayers, but actually I want the contractor in front of us to know where these prices have gone up. Is it the concrete? Is it labour? What the hell is it? It hasn't gone up that much, and the government's calling us out on TV last night saying councils need to pull their budgets in, and yet we get this. So could someone explain or get a contractor in front of us? Because actually I've had enough.
Let me just have a go at responding to that. So you'll recall the 48 million was prior to us going to market. So the escalation in contract has not been from that price within the the fixed price contract that was given, the fixed price contract. Some of this is to do with scope creep, actually, because there was a part of the contract that was not included in the original contract, and that, you know, important element of the way the overflows worked, so that wasn't in the contract. So some of it is to do with that. To get more detail than my generalised information, we would have to get Wellington Water in the room to explain where that's going. So we will get them to come along and talk to that. The sad truth is that there's not much alternative once we get into these contracts. We have done a value engineering exercise alongside Wellington Water to look at where there are savings. So that has already been factored into this. So there, you know, can I just also say, though, we are experiencing these in all our contracts. This is not just a Wellington Water problem. It is also in our roading contracts and everywhere else.
Well, that's what I was going to ask. The second question was the roading contract. So the Winera pathway and shed thing is now up to, what, 23 or 24 million? And I think originally when council said we'd do it 100% ourselves, it was like 8 million. So the 24 million is not even a price job, is it? Is it just a pretend one that we've pulled out of a piece of paper because it's not actually fully quoted?
Well,
so this could go higher?
The problem with all these projects is that you get assessments done, you get estimates done off what you know, and with all these things, as you get into projects, you find out more about ground conditions, etc. So there's a whole lot of issues that kind of reveal themselves as you get further and further into the project. You'll notice with Wellington Water, and we don't do it quite as sort of in such a black and white term, but they are inclined to tell us the confidence rating of their early pricing, and sometimes they are down at 25 to 50%. You know, that it's not a very certain price. So, my recollection of the price around a tank was that they did give us confidence ratings on that. So and they were quite low in those first, the first iterations of those.
So with that roading then that we said we would do and the community are chasing and hounding us, that could still keep rising then, couldn't it, from the 24 that we cannot afford to do?
There will be a drop-dead moment for the council when we are told in August whether Waka Kotahi will provide us with a subsidy for it, and we will bring that project back to you at that point for a decision on whether to proceed or not, because there's a pretty good chance that that will not be funded, and the council will then be faced with whether it can afford, in fact, to do that job. So there will be a point, probably, depending on when in August we find out that information, in either late August or early September, we'll be able to bring that project back.
I think the other thing, Mayor Baker, is that when we get into deliberations, we'll bring to the table a financial view of all the implications of what we're seeing in terms of the moving parts and the potential risks that we're uncovering at the moment. Some of these projects are still to get to final design, and so until you go out to market, you don't have absolute confidence given how much has changed in the last couple of years. So yes, I mean, there's issues across the board, really, across most of our projects.
Thank you. That's what worries me, because our residents think these things are coming and we've said that we will pay for them, but we're not telling the residents, oh, it's tripled in price. So I do think we have an issue there, but thank you.
Councillor Duncan.
Yeah, follow on with the storage tank there. I see the relocation of the Chorus North Island fibre ducts to the other side of State Highway 59 is cited as a reason for the increase in it. How was that not scoped in part of the deal at the very beginning? Why was that not included, the cost of that?
Councillor Duncan, I can't answer that. I mean, I've been involved in construction projects before. it comes down to the quality of the analysis at the beginning of the project and identification of some of the underground facilities, utilities at least. Sometimes they're in places you don't expect. Can't always be guaranteed. I don't know what happened in this situation. It is one of many factors that's affected this pricing change.
Councillor Lega.
Sorry to harp on in the same vein, but I guess the lessons for us as council, and particularly around the wastewater holding tank, I mean, I can understand, some of the original work that went in. What it hits home for me is when you've got a project of this size, when it started at $48 million, which is probably one of the larger projects we've ever done, if not the largest, but certainly the largest now, and it is so central to our whole strategy around wastewater.
Yeah.
Put in a holding tank, don't increase the size of your pipes. You can delay renewing your pipes. Now it's doubled in cost through scope creep and other issues. It calls into question, it perhaps calls into question, our current strategy. But now we're stuck with it. So what it says to me, look, we're here. The damn thing is going to be built and it'll be part of our infrastructure going forward. But what it says to me is that we need to be, as you said, Jim, a hell of a lot more careful about the information we get on the original analysis of projects, because it just seems to me, I accept that all projects are getting bigger, but we need to know really clearly when there's scope creep or the potential for scope creep, and that that's a hell of a worry to me. I mean, it's just it's a damn shame that it's happened like this, and we need to make sure that it doesn't happen again in the same vein in the future.
So just one comment on that. I totally agree with you, Councillor Leggett. One of the things I think that is always a good discipline is when you pull together a business case, you always look at what the counterfactual is. So what's your alternative? And at what point does the investment not warrant to continue? I mean, you're always wanting to ask that question. So your question is it justified to increase? Does the business case still hold in this situation? I suspect it does, because the investment in the main trunk routes would be a multiple of at least 3 times that, I suspect. I haven't got Mike in the room, but that's in the order that we think it probably would be. But that would be the discipline that we'd want to follow going forward, is before you get into these big complex projects, actually have a view of what's your tipping point.
I completely agree. I think that information we were told that this was the best option and cheaper than renewing your main trunk sooner.
Yeah.
But I don't think we were ever given any idea about any actual figures in terms of, this would have to increase in price, 3, 4, 5 times before it would make sense to try, go for your counterfactual. So, I accept that, and I agree with you that it's highly likely that it is still the best way to go. Doesn't make it any easier for our ratepayers, though.
Councillor Philo.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just want to start by saying thank you to the officers for this report and for the level of detail you have provided. Thank you for that. I appreciate that.
Thank you, Councillor.
And then I have 2 points to speak to. Point 13. On page 45. I've just got a few questions. So the first one is in this point, the last sort of personnel C11. Could I?
There's a typo there. I'm very apologies. There's the typo that we missed. Personnel costs
Oh, okay.
up by 8.8 million. Yeah.
Okay. So I wanted to get, please, some clarification on. Oh, okay. Okay. So that's right.
That might answer your question.
So that's a pretty straightforward one. Okay. In that same point 13, could you just remind me again with regards to the datascape? I see that 2.2 million in consultation fees. Can you? I know it's been spoken about before in council about what the situation with that, but can you please just remind me of why that expense has gone so high?
Okay, I can answer the question now, and we can avoid the conversation later, if you like, in the quarterly report. Look, this project started off with, I think, a budget of around about 3.6 million. You've got it right there in section 8. And we are now projecting 8 million. So how did we get there? The answer is that this project has taken a lot longer. So we have engaged, for example, a number of contractors to be able to do this work, to implement and execute it, to supplement our own teams. So therefore, there's always a burn rate every time you extend the project. At the moment, the burn rate we're forecasting to the end of this year, end of calendar year 24, so December 2024, is about $116,000 of contractor costs. And that's actually dropped from last year's burn rate of about 156. So you've got contractor costs, we have some licensing costs that we always owe to Datacom that we're still to pay. But the primary driver here is the actual delay. So if a project was expected to take 2 years and it's taken 4.5 or whatever it is, that drives your costs up dramatically. So we've got some contingency in that 8 million, by the way. I don't really want to have to come back here and ask for some more money. The project is now being re-baselined to a schedule that we think we can work to. I don't think we had a realistic one a few months ago, and we can. I'll get when we get to the quarterly report. I think perhaps we owe you a little bit more information about what that looks like, and I'll get Chanel, our CIO, to talk to that. But that's what's driving it. It's the time frame. And just to put this in perspective, and you're wondering whether $8 million is value for money for a complete overhaul of your ERP systems, it actually is. The counterfactual to this one was probably going to be twice that. So if we stayed with the existing system and gone down their track and upgraded to their cloud-based service, we would have been paying probably about 15 million. So Ross who was very much aware of that when this was chosen.
So Jim, you're telling us we saved money.
Well, I hate to say it, but it's been arduous and challenging for the team, and it's cost us more money. Yeah, but it's higher, but actually it is still within the realms of it.
Just to further the point that the Mayor raised with, in terms of consequence to the contractors, to them?
That depends entirely on the individual. The Datascape one, I think in your construction contracts, Daryl.
That puts risk onto the contractor, and they'll probably build that into their price.
Yeah, there's a balance to be struck. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
My second point that I wanted to raise was point 27. Point 27. It mentions in the road and cost budget, just driven by cost escalation. Are officers able just to give us a quick brief on what those were?
I'll ask Daryl to respond to that one.
Through the chair. Yes, there were some cost increases to do with materials. There was additional staff. There was the living wage component. But a lot of it was to do with the just the general cost of materials going up.
So the cost of materials and the living wage added to about 1 point.
No, off the top of my head, I can't remember, but the top 5 items came to about 1.13.
More than what was estimated
Yep.
for.
And that was for a 1-year rollover. So it was about an increase of about 33%.
Okay. And sort of just within that same point 27, the last item there was the Three Water, I'm assuming that's Three Waters, transition costs of 0.5 million. Just curious, I know it's great it's reimbursed, just curious, what would those kind of costs, transition costs involve?
Most of it is staff time, so we are largely funding one staff member from transition costs that were provided from the Department of Internal Affairs under the previous reform. They've now advised us, and I'm about to sign a document that enables us to carry this forward into this reform and carry on using that, the remainder of that money, and there's about 400,000 left in that, so we will need every dollar of that for transition as we go forward, I'm confident. So,
So it's staff time and the internal affairs are charging?
No, are reimbursing
They're
us.
reimbursing. Oh, okay. So it's not really then a cost as such.
It's not really an
It's showing in our figures, though.
Yeah, but it will net out.
Cool. And then the last thing is I hope that those opportunities that you mentioned come out in our favour. Okay.
There's some probabilities against those, so they can go up and down.
All right, thank you very much, Councillor Filo. Frankly, I'm shocked that Personnel C11 wasn't raised by Councillor Duncan.
I was shocked to not find it myself, actually.
Councillor Hayward.
Kia ora no, again reiterating the point, thank you to the officers. Point 46, He Pātai. With regards to the wastewater storage tank, at every stage of this process, councillors have been appraised of the costs, including a contingency. Now, obviously, in every instance, it looks like the contingency has been reset, which makes you wonder what the point of a contingency is if we have to continually reset it. My question is this. How confident are we about the degree of the amount set aside for contingency, knowing the amount of cost overruns that we've had so far?
I'll make an attempt on answering that question. So the way they've modelled the contingency, at least this time, they're using what they call Monte Carlo analysis, which is a fancy way of saying you're modelling all sorts of scenarios to come out with an answer. It is probably the best way to do it, but at the end of the day, it's still only as good as your inputs. So I think, look, we're taking that as being the best estimate, including a revised contingency from Wellington Water. But to be honest, I mean, the history on this project, I wouldn't be a betting man to say either way whether it will come in under 97. I mean, certainly Wellington Water have one thing about this project, I guess, and it's a good thing. It has some other effects though, is that it's coming in ahead of our anticipated schedule in the LTP. So I think it's due to complete in the second year of the LTP, whereas we had it in the third year. So the sooner you can get this thing finished, the less likely it's going to increase or go over its cost budgets is the way you probably should look at it.
I've 3 more questions, I think. Notwithstanding, maybe subs. Thank you, Jim, for your stab at the question. Before I get into that question, I would just point out that while it may be imprudent of a council to not have any contingency assigned at all, it does also stress credulity of a number that has been so far so badly found out with regards to the overruns. With regards to your point about the counterfactuals, just so we just tidied this up, it's also true that the costs for going for a counterfactual improvement on some other part of the network, particularly wastewater, whether it is trunk lines or some other network that helps with I&I and overflows, is also going to go up as well because of the same pressures on staff, on materials, etc. As well. Cool. Confirmed that.
Yep.
With regards to Datacom, I am trying to understand whether, from your commentary, if we are past the worst of this from a cost perspective. Is there sunlight coming, or am I reminded of the old phrase that it is always darkest before it's completely black?
That's a good question. Look, I would say that I certainly have a lot more confidence than when I joined here a few months ago about the direction of travel on this project. And I can say that because I think we've got a very good governance arrangement in place, working well with the business, because you sometimes can only go as fast as the business is able to accommodate or assimilate the changes, and there's a lot of changes here. There's a lot of changes through the regulatory program at the moment. We are effectively through the bulk of the program, and we've got great support from Nick's team and the regulatory team at the moment, working through her stuff. You know, we've completed many modules already, so what's outstanding is we can sort of see the daylight at the end of this tunnel. There is a few modules that we're not sure about, but they tend to be on the minor side, and including field mobility and stuff like that. But you know, that's sort of around the edges. So really, the game plan here is that we've got clarity of how quickly we can release modules into our system and how quickly the business can accommodate them. So it is a journey of exploration with Datacom, though, because you're not always entirely sure what you're getting until you've absolutely put it to the test. So that's been our experience, so we're a little bit cautious on this one.
Last question. I guess there may not be any response you can give, but I guess what would be the response from the community when we are confronted with large cost overruns and we are trying to communicate that we are looking for cost efficiencies, and then we go and have a project which is not related to any of this and has a different quanta of money set aside, like the Rose Garden down at the lagoon, which would, for most people, would see to be considered a nice to have, and how does that, from an overall organisation perspective, get managed so as to help enhance our ability to be seen to be responding to the acute pressures of the cost of living and our specific focus on the key deliverables for our council?
I'll give it a go. Oh, you can have a second crack at this one. Well, I guess the way we need to look at this is, I think, as officers and then and advising and providing guidance to the council, is that we've got a portfolio of projects that we're delivering to the community. And at the end of the day, if we're starting to see that there's cost pressures occurring on any of those projects, and they're occurring on most of them, then we have to front up and look at the trade-offs, because the one thing we cannot afford to do is to breach our, firstly, we can't breach our financial thresholds for the LGFA, and secondly, you know, we are trying to do our best to keep rates to the positions that we've described in our long-term plan. So this is about a discussion about what's more important than the other thing. And if we don't get Wakatahi funding on a particular road item, and that means if we're going to go ahead with that project and it's potentially still up for escalation, cost escalation, that's 50% that we don't get, that we have to find from somewhere. If we look at our long-term plan, we are going to be hitting our what we've agreed to be our threshold for financial funding. I think it's around year four out of year 10. So that is a significant, that puts significant downward pressure on our projects. So it means hard trade-off decisions have to be made once we start to understand where the cost risks are.
I'm sure that's going to be easily explainable to somebody in the Porirua Club on a Friday night when I ask, why the hell did you go ahead with rose garden improvements at Aotea Lagoon? I will leave it at that. No more questions.
That's fine, Councillor. Yeah.
Councillor Liga.
Just following on for that, so it begs the question, which I don't think you've answered fully, Jim, around the rose garden. Now, I understand that $3 million odd or whatever. I mean, it's a damn good question to ask. Why are we doing this in the light of all this other stuff? Is already in the budgets? Is that correct?
Yes.
So if we,
yes, that project is in the budgets. Yeah.
that it's already in the existing budget. So if we didn't go ahead with that,
Yeah.
what would that mean in terms of the rest of our budget?
Let's have a look. Lynn, have you got the number on hand?
No. Rose Garden is the example that's been brought up by Jeff. All right, it's part of the whole project around Aotea Lagoon.
Reserves and parks.
Yeah.
We might have to come back to
We
you.
have to come back to you.
that.
I just don't have it quite at my fingertips at the moment.
Cool. Yeah, that's no problem, I think, coming back on it later. Was there anything else on that, Councillor Liggett?
No, that's it. Thanks.
Cool. Councillor Duncan.
Yeah, just getting back to the datascape thing, we are an alpha site for that, aren't we? But there are other councils coming on board. Is that going to lessen the cost for us? Are they going to be sharing the extra expenses with the design?
Okay, so there's two things to consider about this. Actually, Datascape, or say Datacom, have been very successful in securing a good portfolio of councils in New Zealand. So that's encouraging. We're working actually quite closely with Cavity Council at the moment, and they're implementing Datacom. And yes, they're learning from our lessons. We've shared those with them. But one of the things that they're doing, which will be very helpful to us, is that they're actually working with Datacom to build the module that will link to water meters. And so, that's perhaps some pain that we don't have to go through. Ian and the team are actively comparing notes with other councils around the finances. But look, we were the first out of the block here. But I'm encouraged by the fact that there is a good community of support. So if there wasn't, I'd be concerned, because you just don't want to have an orphan project or product. And Datacom are continuing to invest in this product. They have significant sites in Australia as well.
Mayor Baker.
Sorry to be annoying, and you can come back on this, but with the Rose Garden project, is it too late to cancel that if we... No, I'm serious, because we know what happened at the duck pond and how there's no more than $3 million in the tank. Is there any point doing a project knowing it's going to blow out because there is no more money?
We're short of Mike at the moment, but I think we've entered a contract for that. So there would be a cost to escape that.
That's probably not as high as the escape that we would get with you coming back and saying everything's increased. Not having go at you, the contractors. So I'd quite like a reply on that. Not today.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we will come back to you.
Yep.
All right. Are there any further questions? Don't appear to be. Any final points? Ian, Jim, everything's been covered off? If you want to speak to that, show your mic's off.
So I'd just like to refer back to paragraphs 6, 7 and 8, where we're requiring an approval of to the changes of the Chief Executive's delegations. The first one, so to approve a reset of the Chief Executive's operational budgets to align to the new forecasts in accordance with the requirements of the formal reference and delegations policy. Approved. Thank you. To approve the reset of the Chief Executive's capital delegations to align to the capital expenditure forecast. Oh,
Yeah, we're just going through these if there are specific questions in relation to the delegations.
sorry, should I?
Well, yeah, if you want to speak to them, or if you're,
Oh,
if
no,
you're
I'm
think-
happy just to
take
read
it.
them out.
Okay, cool. No, that's all good. If there are no further questions in that, sorry, Councillor Leggett.
I'm confused now as well. I thought that approval, the reset of the delegations, was inherent in the recommendations.
They are.
Yes.
They are. So if
Yeah.
You were just
I'm after
reinforcing
the
what-
formal approval of those delegations.
saving Ian to read it out, you can to go through it. Yeah, I think through the chair, we need to seek just approval for our recommendations sitting in the paper.
Okay, cool. All right, well, in that case, I think we can move straight through to voting on this if there are no further questions. So just noting that we are receiving the report, amending the following budgets and the relevant approvals as well as have been noted. So no further questions. All those in favour, please say aye. Opposed? That is carried. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Sorry.
Thank you. All right, we'll move through to item 7.3, the major projects report. I'll move that to put it on the table. It's seconded by Councillor Waddle. I'll invite, did Jim or Lynn want to speak to this to introduce it?
Yeah, I'll just introduce this because I think, okay, there's a subtlety in this report which I would like to make the councillors aware of. So when you have a project report and it is in, particularly if it's in red, the objective is not to leave it in red, it is to get it back to green. So, and that may be that you de-scope or you get an approval for an increase to budget, or you stop it. But you don't just leave it in red. So what you'll see in this paper is we've deliberately tried to call out what is it that we need to do, the corrective actions to bring them back to green. And in some cases, like the Datascape project, dare I say it, it's a request for an increase in the funding, specifically to get that out of red. So that's just an important point to note when you read these reports. You should always be asking us, how do you get it to green? So we've done our best to do that. Okay.
We were afraid of the answer.
Yeah, but just for your benefit. So through the chair,
All right, yeah, well, I was going to say on that note, so I'll approach this in the usual way, going through the projects one by one, and I think immediately probably jumping into how do we get it into green, Datascape.
So I'm going to ask Chanel to give you, so it's obviously around the budget, but I'm going to ask Chanel to give you her take, she's our CIO, of how the project is going and what we've done to, I guess, build some confidence and momentum in this project. I don't think you've heard from Chanel before about this, so I think it'd be important to hear from the person that's actually closest to this. Chanel.
Thank you. So we have done some comprehensive planning with Datacom on the modules that are left and ensuring we've been working very closely with the business that we are going to deliver the remaining modules by December 2024. To answer the question before, we are through the worst of it, and I definitely can see the light at the end of the tunnel now. The modules that are left are a lot smaller than the ones that we have previously implemented, so they don't have as big of an impact on the business, meaning we can get through those rather quickly and deliver them within sort of a 2-month time frame, where some of them did take about 6 months to build. Just touching on, we were the alpha site as well. We were developing the product with Datacom, so it is very different to any normal software implementation project where the software is already there. So we have reset the scope, which will turn the scope and the schedule back to green, and we are just completing the final testing of the bulk animal renewals, which is our largest risk in this project. So we will be turning that to green as well by the end of the month. So that is all going to plan currently at the moment. And then lastly is we're just completing the evaluation of where the building consents module is in Datacom and whether we do take that or not, or we leave that to another council to develop that with Datacom, and we might potentially pick that up later with them. Any questions?
Cool. Thank you very much. Open for questions. Councillor Duncan.
Yeah, thanks for that. Has the interface between Datascape or Datacom and Antenno been resolved? Because that was creating quite a few problems.
So yes, we are continuing to work on that. There was a slight issue there where it was closed off with the external vendor. In the case, it was with Downer, and it was automatically closing our requests. We have since stopped that from happening until we can complete it. So it was not that the tickets were being closed for the public. We were still opening new ones, but it was notifying obviously straight away, which we wanted to stop. So it is in progress and it is progressing well.
Any further questions on Datascape? Do not appear to be. Thank you very much. We will move through to the next item, which is Te Ranui Eastern Porirua Development. Any questions from councillors? Councillor Hayward.
Kia ora no. I just wanted to confirm, in terms of our engagement with Waka Kotahi, obviously there've been a major announcement regarding, so not Waka Kotahi, sorry, Kāinga Ora. Apologies. There's been a major announcement earlier this week with regards to Kāinga Ora. How on the ground are we in our conversations with them about what those announcements may mean for the level of commitment that KO has with the delivery of the Porirua development project?
We're not that close to that. And the review, which I looked at yesterday, is not very revealing around what the large-scale projects, which Eastern Porirua is one of, what will happen to them. What we do know is that we only have funding for this phase from government, and the next phase was subject to a budget bid. That's not even in train. The business case has not been done for it, and I think they have been waiting for the review to initiate that bid. So I will make contact with both Kāinga Ora and the Ministry of Housing and Urban Development to establish if they're any clearer. But if you read the review, there's a lot of the recommendations basically initiate a whole lot of work program work, which will then baseline their budget. They are saying that their debt profile is due to increase significantly if they go on the path they are on. And I would estimate that will have an impact on Eastern Porirua. I don't see how it can avoid that. They have a less interventionist strategy than the previous government. So it's a little bit wait and see, I'm afraid. But I will, if I find anything out, I will let the council know.
Sub, can I just perhaps make a request that with regards to these projects reports, that we may want to have some sort of update regarding, you know, the top end, top level stuff as well, just because of the impact it has in terms of councillors' ability to, when making prudent decisions about what the risk is from the position of central government's funding for the projects.
We can certainly include something in that. Quite often the information is rather more organic than something we can sort of report in black and white, but I'm certainly happy to let council know anything that I find out about the progress of that review and what impact it will have on that project.
Councillor Filo.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My question is that table, the infrastructure table right at the start, the bottom item, the Waitangiroa Link Road Program, which is the only council funding, the 8 million coming from council. Is that? Can you just remind me? Is that the Whitby wastewater? That we had discussed? Is
Yeah,
that?
I'll get Zach to answer this, so that we've definitely been peeling through this one.
So through you, Chair. So the program is the Waitangiroa and Whitby Link Road project. So previously this was brought to you as a combined package of work, which was wastewater, potable water, and electrical main from Wellington Electricity. The update around that project is this was brought to you about a year ago, seeking further funding for the wastewater main. It was originally the potable water main that was funded. Through due diligence and detailed design, it's actually been identified there is a different alignment which actually could get broader benefits for the Whitby catchment, and it doesn't actually use the Waitangiroa Link Road. It comes through the back through Stemhead Lane. So the price there as it sits for 8 million is just now for the potable water main. The original budget was 4 million. It's 8 million because of just cost escalation across the board. So the wastewater main has been de-scoped from this project, pending a decision of council at the LTP deliberations. And what will happen is that wastewater main or the identified project will now go back on Wellington Water's broader program to then be investment prioritised across the city. So it doesn't need to be done with such urgency because it won't utilise the Link Road corridor.
Well, thanks for clarifying that, Zach. So just so I'm sure it's now just the potable water, but it's doubled in price.
Yep. So the original cost estimate, the $4 million, was I think a 2018 costing.
Oh, okay.
It was a level 0 cost estimate prepared by Wellington Water 6 or so years ago. So the $8 million is a detailed design costing from Orcon. The total project is actually $9 million, but there is about $1 million to come from Wellington Electricity as well. So yes, it has doubled in price, but that's just through the integrity of information now and actually having a proper cost estimate.
But this still needs to be approved at our LTP, this upcoming one, or is this in the budget?
So currently in the budgets is the 16 million, which included the wastewater main itself.
Oh, right.
This has been de-scoped, but there is still a formal decision required from council. So the note in the report is that although the budget says 16 million, we only need $8 million to progress. And the wastewater in some ways precludes itself because there's a more pragmatic and cost-effective way to do it in the future.
And the LTP at the moment assumes 8 million.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, thank you. I have one more question on the last page of this. It's just out of curiosity, really. It talks about how KO's reduced their funding to council from their administrative from 30K to 10K. I just wondered if the officers could talk to that.
Do you want to talk to that, Wendy?
Sorry, I didn't. I was distracted. Sorry.
So it's the...
Could you just repeat that, Councillor Filo?
I can take this.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I can.
Yes. Yes. So we got basically a grant from Kāinga Ora for the planning stages of the Eastern Porirua project, and they have pointed out for some months now that we're beyond the planning stages. They're in implementation, and the call on our staffing is not as great as it once was. So they were expecting, actually about a year ago, to reduce that cost, but we've sort of somewhat eked it out over the last year. There is still a reasonably significant resource involved in us working on that project, and we are trying to mainstream it into the organisation so that we get a more business as usual approach to that. So yes, end of June they'll reduce that funding.
Councillor Ligo.
Oh, thank you. You just answered the question that I had, one of the questions that I had, so that's great. 2 questions. Can I just ask about the $8 million? Is that still in the same, would that potable water still be in the same trench as the Wellington Electricity's power cable?
Through you, Chair. So the simple answer is no, it won't be in the same trench or will be trenched at the same time, just because of clearances between the pipe and a number of different reasons. They will actually be in slightly separated trenches. One of the main reasons behind that is the potable water mains will actually need to come off to connect into some of the development.
Okay.
So no, but it will be done at the same time, so there is cost savings as a result of that.
Okay, so that's the first. The second question was, can you just remind me how many houses have been built in eastern Porirua, actual new houses, and how many are likely to be built under this first tranche of things that are happening before they go back to government for funding?
Through you, Chair. So to date, there's been roughly 20 or so built in actual Eastern Porirua, remembering there was some built slightly prior to that. The main reason behind that is they've got a house relocation policy that they must rehome people from the community within the community. So now that they've freed up significant land, this is roughly about 400 houses is the idea. And that was tied to tranche 1 and 2 funding that was committed by government. So it's actually outlined that.
So that's already committed, so we'll get 400 plus new houses in this phase without any impacts from, or potential impacts from, what might happen to Kōrero.
We don't know that.
We just don't know, do we?
No, I don't think we can assume anything.
So you'll just keep us appraised of that. I just was out of interest. I just wondered where we were at.
Yep.
Any further questions on this before we move to the next item? Do not appear to be. So I'll move through to harbour and catchment, green across the board, which is good to see. I actually do have one question on this, if you're able to come up, Nigel. So this was just in our in the oral hearings to the LTP. The submitters from Gopi indicated a concern around the long-term viability of the riparian planting because of the 5-year envelope that the current funding we have is applied for. And they asked some questions around what that process looks like around us reapplying and what the lay of the land is like with the new government. I wonder if you were able to just speak to that in terms of the long-term viability of this.
Yep. Good morning, councillors. Good morning, Chair. When we first started this program, the intent was that it was a 20-year program. There's a substantial amount of work to do to achieve the objectives of the program. In terms of the funding, yep, it will finish out in 2027, and we are in the process of looking to see where else we can get extra funding from, and this government is certainly. I don't think they're wildly objecting to funding programs like this, but certainly the Jobs for Nature program, which this is, has been cancelled. But there are other opportunities within government to look for extra funding, so we'll be looking for that.
So no alarm bells at this stage. We'll just go through the standard processes and things are looking good for the most part. Okay, cool. Thank you. Does anybody else have any questions in relation to harbour and catchment? No? Perfect. Thank you very much, Nigel. In that case, I will move through to the next item, which is Central City wastewater storage, which we've spoken to a bit already. Were there any further questions on this beyond what we covered in the previous paper? No, there do not appear. Councillor Philo.
Just talking about the green and the red, it's saying it's green for scheduling. So is that it's?
Yeah, it is. It's ahead of schedule, actually.
Oh, okay. So it's just only red for the financial
Correct.
costs.
Yeah, and you've just approved that we'll increase the budget. So it's going to green.
Excellent. Okay, no further questions on that item. So we will move to Kenapuru Area Program. Going around the table, don't appear to be any questions on that. No, all right. Which brings us to Wenera to Onopoto Shared Pathway and Coastal Resilience Project. Councillor Duncan.
Yeah, thanks. Look, we've sort of skirted around the 24 million to do it, but we haven't talked about resilience. I mean, that's going to have to happen anyway. Is there any costing around what the resilience is going to cost us?
Daryl, I think we'll get Daryl to answer this one on behalf of Mike.
Through the chair. Yes, we are, and we've got a workshop with you in mid-July, 18th of July, and proposals to come back to you with there.
Any further questions around this? Councillor Philo.
Yeah, just following on from what the officer just said, will that also include the harbour, restoration that was involved in the project as well as the resilience?
That'll have to be part of it.
Fantastic.
Councillor Hayward.
Just noting that it's not explicitly stated in the GPS around our project, but it is about the types of projects that would fall inside of. Am I correct in saying that? In terms of the report, the GPS is...
The GPS has changed,
yes,
and that obviously will have a bearing on Waka Kotahi's support for this project.
Indeed, but it's not explicitly stating that the project itself is not being supported. I'm just trying to remember...
No, I think the indication's not good. They treat it as a pathway, a shared pathway, which is not one of their priorities.
And just so I'm clear here, we're still waiting from Waka Kotahi in terms of the regional plans, an actual explicit statement about the shared pathway based on the GPS. Is that right?
It's the funding.
Yes, the
we
funding.
get our funding
yes.
Information in August.
Yeah. So if I've understood this correctly, council's due to, according to this, have a workshop in July, but the conversation with Waka Kotahi doesn't come to August. Is there any benefit in trying to create a certainty on the behalf of council when one of the most important pieces of the puzzle is actually central government policy? Does that not sound strange in terms of giving us not all the relevant information to make a prudent decision?
So we've got some very strong signals from Waka Kotahi already. Maybe, Daryl, do you want to add to that?
Through the Chair, I can't add too much, but we're in constant communications with Waka Kotahi, and where a shared path fits within regionally and where it's ranked regionally. So the GPS did not read well, but excuse me, until that final decision comes out, the best indication we had is it could possibly still be funded, but it's less likely.
Okay. One more sub. In regards to the scoping of the project itself, are councillors going to have any discussion about whether officers are looking into scope change so as to deal with beyond the issues of resilience for that section of road in order to meet the challenge of cost escalation?
If you're asking whether we can value engineer a shared pathway back to approximately half the cost, I think the answer is probably we can't, but we will look at what we can do. Obviously, the resilience issue is the most important, so we will focus on that part of the project. Otherwise, the integrity of our road is under threat. So Daryl will have much more insight about what we will be able to cover in July, but that is my understanding of where we're landing.
Okay, no more questions. Good.
Any further questions on this project? Doesn't appear to be. All right, we will move through to the next, which is the climate change program. Any questions on the climate change program? Do not appear to be any. The Resource Recovery Network. Councillor Hayward.
Thank you, Matua Upoko. Thank you again to officers. I'm trying to understand the specific trigger that leads to the revalidation of these areas as red or orange. What caused council officers to shift the priorities so quickly with regards to the uncertainty of the market, considering that that has always been a potential issue throughout the entirety of the project, especially with regards to a private operator moving into the space, which is our preferred, I think I understand to be our preferred option.
Is that Nigel or?
Thank you, Chair. In respect of the C&D facility, yes, there was always an element of risk in the markets there. The significant concern for us was a change in the price of disposing of treated timber. That almost tripled, which made it really difficult for the project economically. So that was one of the primary reasons for that. We are looking to see what else we can do, and we probably won't be running an actual plant itself.
I thank you for that. Just a sup on that part. Where do we get those signals in terms of the price of treated timber? Where does that come from? How do we ascertain the quality of that determination?
That was from the companies directly responsible for that processing and taking it up to Auckland.
My understanding, sorry, it's another sub. My understanding is that in the business case that was a risk identified, that there could be significant change in the marketplace as part of whether to proceed with this model, this approach. Am I right in saying so?
That's correct.
So moving on to the next question, which is about our regional waste minimisation plan. Obviously, that plan has been developed across the region. We have our own local action plans. So I'm not talking about the local action plans in so much that the regional plan is based on the premise of local councils work collaborating together on some of these measures, whether it's organics, C&D, resource recovery. How confident are we, without these measures going forward, that we are actually going to be able to follow through with the presumptions that were the key to that plan in terms of waste reduction? Because the communities are expecting us to lead. This does not look like we are leading.
That's correct. The construction and demolition wastes were a key part of the next phase of the waste management plan, and this does have implications for us, our ability to actually deliver that. Whether we can work with the private sector to encourage them to take up more responsibility is probably where we will be heading.
One last question, and it's just in the section around LTP funding. And there's the second paragraph, which is a single line, says, the LTP process will determine whether projects continue at reduced scope or do not continue in terms of the corrective action. I'm also mindful that later on in the report that we have some of these projects have not been put in the draft LTP at all. Isn't this just being too cute by half by saying, well, we're...
I don't know if I have an answer for that, really. We didn't think, as we were looking at the LTP, that, well, actually audit told us we couldn't put it in because the project wasn't identified sufficiently. So that's the state of play. There's also the support from central government, and that landscape's also changed. There's quite a lot of change. So I understand what you're saying. It's a wee bit of tautology, really. But I think anybody reading that understands that there's a significant level of uncertainty, and as a result, we have not been able to sufficiently scope it to put it in the long-term plan.
Thank you. There was one other question. Sorry, apologies. Again, because of our need to work alongside councils across the region, I'm thinking predominantly Wellington City and Hutt City, have they been appraised of what we have already just communicated that you have communicated to us through this documentation? Isn't there a fear that if we look like we're moving backwards, it gives them license to move backwards? This becomes a fait accompli in terms of our overall commitment to reducing waste on C&D and potentially organics as well.
They're much bigger than us. They make their own decisions. I don't know that that's a factor for us to consider in making a decision for us. So, they're their own council.
There's still strong support regionally for the organics processing plant, so we're all working together alongside that. So that's a central requirement for us to actually have organics processing. So.
No more questions. One comment. I am very concerned about our overall council positioning on this issue. We have spent, several months as a council front-footing our need to be proactive on this issue, and in some instances, pointing out when other councils in the region have not been equally proactive or been demonstrated that they're proactive on dealing with these challenges. It puts us in quite a bind, and certainly for me as a representative around that table, if we look like we haven't pulled up the white flag and we haven't waved the white flag, but we're certainly stitching a white flag. Kia ora.
Councillor Whelo.
Thanks again, Mr. Chair. My question is really just for clarification on some of the figures that are listed. What have I got there? So the total spend, if I've got that right, is about 820k to date, of which 459k was in capex. Was that sort of the plant equipment that was already purchased that Andrew used to talk about? Is that?
Yep, that's correct. That was the only capex that we've spent to date.
That 549 was a deposit paid on the equipment.
Oh, okay. So is that just lost then?
It's a commitment. It's a commitment that, it's not lost. I know Mike has got some plans, which I'm sure he will share with the councillors in due course, about how we can leverage what we are getting in terms of the plant, but it won't be to the scale of what was envisaged.
Oh, okay. So when will we kind of know those plans?
Look, we're short of Mike right now, and he, as you will have picked up, is very experienced in this area and does have some plans in train. So we will come back to you on how that will travel in future. It is helpful for us to get through the long-term plan to advance the other waste project that we have in there. So they are all somewhat connected. It's our waste stream we're trying to manage. Oh. So we will come back to you on the various phases of that.
Is it likely to be diverted into another sort of waste project rather than this one?
I would be slightly making it up if I told you anything much more than that.
So the 509k is a deposit for. So thank you. And what's the OPEX spend? The 271k.
The OPEX spend has been the work around developing all these projects. So it's been staff time and consultancy time, and project planning, business cases.
Okay. So project managing for the has the 1.5 mil funding, has that been drawn down already? Have we got that from?
As part of that deposit, the ministry did refund us for their proportion of the funding there, yes. So part of it has been drawn down.
Part of it's been drawn down?
Yep.
Does it cover these costs?
That CapEx cost, so partly was paid by council and partly by the ministry. Mm-hmm. The 1.5 million is for the total cost of that construction demolition material processing plant, which is fully covered by the ministry.
So does that mean that the funding has only covered the capex so far,
Correct. The
Well-
deposit. Yeah.
the deposit. Will we be likely to draw any more of that funding down?
Not until we confirm what we are going to do, and we will have to bring that back to you before we proceed.
Councillor Duncan.
Yeah, just excuse my financial ignorance here, but can you tell me what LTD is in the financial table on page 72, that's third to last column? What is LTD?
Through the Chair, Councillor Duncan, that's life to date. It's basically from the beginning, from the inception of the project to the date of this report, that is the expenditure incurred.
Thanks.
All right, doesn't appear to be any further questions on this item, so we'll move through to the final one, Whitford Brown to Parimata Corridor Programme. Any questions from councillors? Councillor Wehape.
Thank you. Page 75 in the risks and issues. I just wanted to ask there, in the corrective action part there, to enable the project to be completed within budget, etc., etc., etc. And they've got in there, and potentially the crossing at Parimata School out of low cost, low risk program. Sorry, can you just explain that a little bit further, please? Because I don't really understand.
Through the Chair, the crossing's not part of the project per se. It comes under our low cost, low risk program, so we have to do that this financial year, but we're trying to coordinate it as part of this project.
Okay, so is that the work that we are doing throughout the city in regards to the schools? We're putting it into a different budget to be able for it to...
No, we're just going to undertake that part of that work with that contractor.
Okay.
So we're just using money from a different budget that needs to be used
Right.
to implement that. So we're just trying to implement it with the same contractor and to do it as smoothly as possible.
Gotcha. Okay, now I understand. Thank you.
Councillor Leggett.
So in addition to that, so that crossing is a crossing outside Parimata School, all right, not the one closer to the off-ramp where there'll be another one, won't there, at the end of the walkway.
At the southern end.
Northern end.
Northern end.
The bridge. The pedestrian overbridge.
Right. Yep.
By ex-Brights.
Yep.
So there's going to be a crossing there, and the Parimata School is completely separate, isn't it?
Yep.
It's not part of this project at all.
We just want to deliver it as part of this project.
Okay, all right. Yeah, it just wasn't clear to me. I know the two were getting mixed up because I thought it ended at the overbridge. So then, can I ask another question about the Papakowhai Road, Whitford Brown set up? We don't plan to do anything. I did ask the question about a potential 2-lane there for a short length to be able to help alleviate some of the traffic build-up in the morning where people don't pull over far enough because it's only supposedly 1 lane. Is that possible, or is that being contemplated?
That's something we'll bring to you on the workshop.
Fine.
Mayor Baker.
Mine's probably workshop then as well. The Whitford Brown Ave Papakowhai intersection and Aotea there, I see it is on hold. Now we have the proposed church going in on the corner. Will we look at it again, or does that have to be part of that resource consent for the church? Well, I should say not just a church, it's a temple. Thank you.
I think it's a 2-part answer. From the transport side, we'll be looking at the effects of that development application and how that may impact on the intersection. But we'll definitely be discussing the Whitford Brown Papakowhai intersection on the 18th.
Councillor Hayward.
One more to add into the mix, Mātua Upoko, around this, is that how frequently or recently have officers been having conversations with Aotea College, which has a sizable number of people who would, as pedestrians, utilise that space during school term times at specific points as well, and also has an increasing school role as well.
Sorry, I can't tell you exactly when the last communications were. I know the project manager has been consulting with them. I can come back with that information if you like.
Councillor Filo.
So the financial is amber, yellow, and the risk is as well. So what will it take to bring it to green?
Daryl?
Just looking at that. Good question. We're concluding,
question.
we're actually slightly ahead of time, and we're expecting to finish early. So I think between now and then, it probably won't change until we get to the end of the project. Because
Lynn,
financial,
do you
we're
want to
still going to
clarify? Is there anything you would like to add to this?
Through the chair. So I think looking back, this report is at 31 March. So as we're progressing through the project, we're getting more certainty on what those costs are going to be. So it's showing as amber because there is a slight risk that costs could increase. But the further we get through the project, the more certainty there is that will come in within budget. So we're hoping that maybe the next report might be green. We'll just keep monitoring the project.
So is the risks that the cost might go, that the financial will go up, the cost to the financial will go up? Is that what the risk is?
That's right, yes.
Okay, so you're hopeful that it'll be green next time?
Well, we're 2 months past the 31st of March, and Daryl can tell you whether those risks still exist at today's date.
Some risks still remain, but the ongoing work with the contracts and pricing up is we believe that those risks will diminish drastically.
What, were there any other risks beside the financial costs going up, Darryl? What are the other ones?
There were supply risks with the lights and having the, I can't remember, there's only 2 companies that can enliven them for Wellington Electricity, and there was major issues getting them on site. They've got too much work to do across the region. So that's the simple risk that we've been carrying and trying to work around.
Councillor Lega.
And so refresh my memory, any cost overruns are borne by us. This is a free project and we will be paying for any cost overruns, is that correct?
Correct.
That's correct.
So we're looking at scoping issues all the time to ensure that we do deliver within the budget.
Tell them to do less traffic control. There's the most traffic control in that place that I've ever seen.
All right. As far as I can tell, that's end of questions on this item. No further questions. Okay, so I am going to put the motion that we receive the report. All those in favour, please say aye. Opposed? That is carried. 1 second, councillors, I just need to take some process advice. Okay, cool. Sorry, councillors, just clarifying some process around. We have an extraordinary council meeting at 10 o'clock that we may need to potentially open and close and then move back to Puna Kōrero business just because it has to start at 10. But it's just clarifying that we're able to do that while we're in public excluded, which we are about to move into. My understanding is that we can. So I'm going to move us through to item 8. And move that we go into public excluded, seconded by Councillor Duncan. Anyone speaking to that? No. All those in favour, please say aye. Opposed?